Hello, this is the Vanguard Report, episode number 41. Today is Monday, March 9th, 2015. So, when you expose radical feminism to the disinfecting sunlight of the world's gaze, then, at least in theory, you kill it. And when you do that, you kill the rest of feminism too. You see, moderate feminisms owe their very existence to the existence of radical feminism. Think about that long and hard and study the world around you. Radical feminism is the driving element which keeps all of feminism dynamic. Take away radical feminism, and the rest of feminism would grow anemic and devoid of purpose and would eventually fade away. This throws a revealing light upon the old cliche that not all feminists are like that. NAFALT. You see, it is not even necessary for all feminists to be like that, provided only that some feminists are like that. That's all it takes. Feminism in general plows its destructive furrow through the world by the combined work of all feminists. Yes, even the moderate ones. Yes, even the nice ones, even the coffee shop feminists. They all pull together to pull that feminist plow. They're all yoked in the same harness, whether they know it or not. But the radicals are the real powerhouse, willing to drive the feminist project toward unthinkable frontiers. The moderates, whether they admit it or not, serve mainly for camouflage because no matter how far the radicals push the envelope, the moderates will always seem comparatively reasonable, like the good cops in that timeless game. Now, the moderate feminists are not much about pushing the envelope. That is what the radicals do. But when the envelope indeed gets pushed, you can always count on the moderates to fill up the space which the pushy radicals have pushed open for them. The mainstream is always migrating in a more radical direction. And so the future of liberal feminism is always radical. All right. I am your host for episode number 41 of the Vanguard Report, Fiedelbogen. My fellow host, Nick Redding, is with me today, as usual. Nick, say hello to all of the people.
Hey everyone, my name is Nick Redding. I'm with mensrightsedmonton.com. Everything I do, all the stunts that I do, all the interviews that I do, all the comedy that I do, and this radio show are designed to keep on reminding people that I'm Nick Redding and I am an active MRA here in Edmonton. And if you know anybody around Edmonton, if you are around Edmonton, you can drop us a line to the Contact Us section at mensrightsedmonton.com, and we can hang out and talk.
All right. Well, so a lot of people are turning against feminism these days. I mean, it is spreading like a brush fire into new demographic sectors and new cultural communities, and this is happening at an increasing rate. It's a joy to behold, truly a joy. In tandem with this, the activated non-feminist sector is bursting with restless energy and, unfortunately, sectarian conflict. We all know what we're talking about here. I predicted long ago that as this thing got bigger and took on more numbers, more population, that people would disagree with each other on a larger and larger scale. And guess what? I was right. But it's nothing to get fussed about. It's just how the world works. These things happen, you know. And rather than lamenting this or bewailing this, we should accept it, even celebrate it, and find a way to work it to our advantage. Nick, do you think that this growing explosion of conflict and different opinions within the activated non-feminist sector is potentially a good thing that we can work to our advantage?
Well, yeah. For the same reason that uh, when people say that we're a bunch of right wingers, a bunch of SOCONs and TradCons, we can point to people like Bernard Chapin and Rocky Mystery and say, no, they are exclusively right wing and they won't have anything to do with us because they think we're a bunch of commies. That works for us and it works for them. Yeah, if they want to appeal to people who are strictly right wing and they're afraid that by backing these men's rights guys, they might somehow be working with the left, they can assure them that they're not.
Well,
Um, uh, and incredibly so, because we're not making it up when we say that these people think that we're terrible and we're doing things very differently from them.
well, yes. Well, you know, in a way, they're right. In fact, they are right. We are doing things in a different way from them. You know, my take on all of this is that we got to keep it not apolitical. That's not the right word, but I believe apartisan is a word I've heard recently. We're not looking at partisan politics, you know, as in Democrat, Republican, that sort of thing. Nor are we looking at left versus right, because, well, nothing warms the cockles of my heart more than to see trouble in paradise over on the left. To see, yes, yes, to see people over there in that neck of the woods disagreeing, and some of them becoming disenchanted with, you know, feminism, and nothing like you know, seeing them, you know, get into squabbles with each other, because that means that the movement overall, the non-feminist revolution overall, is getting stronger and reaching into further and deeper quarters of the culture as a whole.
Yeah.
But
Um, and there's a lefty here in Edmonton that I know who's gone strong, hard anti-feminist. Um, Warren Farrell has always been a left winger, and Ernest Belfort Bax.
was a socialist.
He was a socialist in 1910. He wrote The Fraud of Feminism, and from the excerpts that I've read, he had the same frustrations that I do 100 years later.
I know. Much of his writing seems like it could have been written 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's just that contemporary.
So you know, even though you will find fewer people on the left, at least in the current zeitgeist, who are opposed to feminism as you are in the right. I think that making this a right versus left issue it gives feminists a ground to go to. That ground being the left.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to do that. You don't want to give them any home territory at all.
You want them to be homeless on the street. with no place to lay their head. Yes. Well, yeah, the left, the political left, is uniquely a soil in which feminism can flourish for reasons that I guess I don't have time to go into right now. But basically, well, to give you the short version, the left makes gynonormativism possible. The right is just gynocentrism, but as you head toward the left, as feminism piggybacks upon the political apparatus existing on the left side of things, uh, it's empowered, that word again, it is empowered to reach its full efflorescence, its full blossoming, which is gynonormativism, making the female view of the universe, female values, et cetera, the normative and subjective state of life for everybody. But seeing trouble on the left means that there is a wrench being thrown in that device, which is all to the good. Anyway, yeah, it's a good sign, all of this, because it's a sign of growth. All of this sectarianism. We're growing. And as we're growing, we're disagreeing with each other, which is just, that's how human beings operate. We're bursting at the seams because we are vibrant. We uppity, non-feminist people of whatever stripe, whatever persuasion, can no longer be contained. We are rippling out into the world, and yes, we are becoming ambient. We must agree to disagree, and we must give each other plenty of room so that we don't bump into each other and step on each other's bunions. That's how we make things copacetic for all concerned. We call this the activated non-feminist diaspora. The non-feminist sector is like a seed pod which has ripened and it's busted open, and it's spreading those little seeds on the wind across the landscape, where they will fall upon soil and germinate and grow, and then put out more seed pods and more seeds. On and on it goes. There's just so many metaphors, and you could use the seed pod metaphor, you could use the brush fire metaphor, you could use the penetrating oil metaphor. But the central concept here is of something that's spreading out and working its way into smaller and smaller corners. That's the model we want to work with. That's the model that feminism worked with back in the day when it first got big and started growing. And that is very much the model that the revolution against feminism will follow, just to reverse what feminism has done, to stop what feminism has done. And at this point, I think feminism has gone to seed. I don't think it really has many more seeds to scatter. It doesn't have any more new tricks. It's used up all of its tricks. And we have cataloged and described most of them, if not all of them. And we are evolving methods to cope, to deal with them, to block them at every twist and turn. So yes, we're spreading out. We are distributing ourselves. And we are no longer a target because we are no longer a singular dot on the landscape. We are all around. And this trend will continue as our numbers grow. So I think it's time for us to keep doing what we've been doing in the past, but we should learn how to do it better. The non-feminist breakout, mark that phrase, the non-feminist breakout will occur when we reach such a critical mass. Such a critical mass that we will speak our minds freely in the public square and activate the public square effect and turn ourselves into a propaganda juggernaut. That's right, this is all about propaganda. Propaganda is not a bad word necessarily. We will turn ourselves into a propaganda juggernaut. They will be helpless to stand against us when we speak our minds openly and freely, when we proclaim our lack of feminism, not even our opposition to feminism, although that too, but just our simple lack of feminism. When we declare this openly under the noonday sun, and then the feminists will see that they are surrounded and they can make enemies out of us, or they can just leave us alone. And then maybe we can get along in this world. I don't know, but that remains to be seen. That, friends, will be the non-feminist breakout. Now we must also get to work on building up the post-feminist social infrastructure, but that's a subject for another day. And Nick, I know that the post-feminist social infrastructure is, a vision of yours as well. I mean, I know you and I have talked about this from way back. We talk about, building communities and enabling people to set up communities in their local area to keep, spreading the gospel, so to speak.
Well, I mean, the thing is, in the post-feminist era, it's going to be actually even harder to convince people that feminism is a problem that we have to watch out for. Because when you tell them about how crazy these people were, no one's going to believe you. Like it's that outlandish.
It's not really outlandish. I mean, it's predictable, and a marker of our success at that point in time.
Yes, but I mean, when I was growing up, there was still a certain amount of freedom of thought, as there is now, but considerably less. And I watched all this science fiction warning me about a totalitarian state, a totalitarian mindset, and I didn't. I enjoyed it, but I didn't really take it as seriously as I probably should have, because again, it all seemed very theoretical and very unlikely. Was the main thing.
Well, at that
Uh,
point, you had nothing, no real life way to index that, and
yeah,
that had to come later.
and now, wow, like now,
It's just
I
roaring to life with a vengeance.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think that we should, in order to create and preserve this post-feminist state, as you put it, um, all of us should endeavor towards our own artwork or our own way of understanding and conveying
Communicating what we
what we've
understand,
seen, right? By way of artwork and literature.
and pass it on as a legacy to posterity.
Yeah, because the message will get through to some kid tomorrow who 10 years later sees whatever form this has taken. I don't know if we've said this openly, but I believe that feminism is just the current form of what George Orwell was describing in 1984. Once feminism goes down, another set of liars will come up in its place, and they'll rely on all the same mechanisms that we're fighting now. Um, uh,
Well, I think we maybe have our work cut out for us in that we need to make some record of this and leave some analysis of all of this, which
exactly.
will be available to people in the future.
For the same reason that George Orwell wrote in 1984. That you look at it, you quantify it, you put it down in some kind of record. Someone is going to get it. Someone is going to figure out what you're trying to convey.
Somebody
So
will connect the dots and put two and two together.
and the more people who are trying to do this, then the more angles this is going to be come at from, and the more people will get it, right? Because no matter, you know, I've had pretty intimate relationships with a lot of people in the activated non-feminist sector, and it's really been coming to a head as of late. Um, and they, I have to bear in mind that they are reacting to this in a way that appeals to them and people like them in the same way that I am reacting to this in a way that appeals to me and people like me. Uh, so, whatever your perspective is, whatever your beef, whatever your grievance, whatever your motivation, reflect on that. Reflect on what about all this pisses you off, and tell as many people as you can in as creative a way as you can.
Right. Well, we are creating a cultural hologram of awareness, I think would probably sum it up pretty well. And this needs to be transmissible into the future so that anybody can plug into this knowledge and instantly it will become relevant to them where they live in their own time frame. So we got plenty to do, plenty to work on. Anyhow, let's move the program right along. Cue number 1. This goes to a piece recently posted on AVFM. And I think a lot of you have seen this. This is about, it is about the National Organization for Women. Recently, the National Organization for Women was called out for their opposition to shared parenting legislation. Now, that organization, which is crawling with radical feminists, by the way, don't let anybody tell you different, but that organization has a long history stretching back for years of opposing shared parenting. They like the idea that when the couple breaks up, the children go with mom and dad gets kicked out of the picture and he gets to pay the bills. Now he's just a cash cow and that's it. The National Organization for Women now likes it this way and wants to keep it this way. And they have consistently, routinely, never skipped a beat over the years opposed shared parenting. And they've left a paper trail. They've left a record. This was recently called out on AVFM. Shortly after that article was written, not the one I just linked you to, but one earlier, shortly after that article was written, AVFM now National Organization for Women pulled the incriminating documentation off of their website. They pulled it down. The PDF files and the other material, I think there was about 4 or 5 links there. And by the way, the minute I saw them, I downloaded all of them, and I've got them. But now pulled that information off of their website. This is interesting. For one thing, it tells us that they are reading AVFM. They read the original article and instantly, within a day or two, but pretty doggone quick, they pulled the stuff down. They're afraid of big, bad AVFM and the activated non-feminist sector. They're running scared, folks. They're running scared. So, after this happened, this article that I linked you to, which is by Paul Elam, Paul gets in here and he crows about it. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, they're destroying the evidence. Down the memory hole it goes, but too late. We got it. We know about it. But this article by Paul points out just the fact that they took this stuff down, the fact that they did it so quickly, and speculates about why they did it. And Nick, I know you got some ideas about why Now pulled that documentation off of their website.
Well, um, I think you pretty much said it all. They pulled it down because um, it it undermines their claim to be fighting for equality, as they put it, whatever that means.
Well, equality, whatever that means. Though the funny thing is, they're not very proud about fighting against shared parenting. They've been doing it all of these years openly. They never tried to hide it, but suddenly somebody points to it and they want to hide it, which I
Yeah,
find interesting.
yeah, just classic villain behavior. Really, there's no other way to put it. Yeah, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. Oh wait, somebody has an objection. Never happened. Never happened. Go away.
Yeah, they're running scared. I mean, they're running scared like a little bunch of little chicken shits, which is what I think of them. Okay, and oh, like I said, National Organization for Women is a radical feminist organization. They like to tell you that it's moderate or liberal feminism or mainstream feminism, but the place is absolutely crawling with radical feminists like maggots in a carcass. Um, they regularly talk about the patriarchy, okay? And if that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. All right. So they pulled it down because they know that being put in the spotlight for standing against shared parenting is going to put them in a bad light. They're ashamed. They're ashamed because they got caught. I don't mean they feel guilty about it. They feel ashamed. And shame is what you feel when you get caught. Guilt is what you feel when your own conscience convicts you and you know that you're wrong.
There's I have a different opinion on that. Guilt is bad feelings for what you've done. Shame is bad feelings for who you are, what you are in essence.
Mm, that's another way of looking at it.
But either way, what you're saying here is that they're not sorry they did it. They're sorry they got caught.
Exactly. They're sorry they got caught. That's a classic line.
I mean, they, you know, here at here on the Vanguard report, we have a little bit less of a charitable view towards these people than Karen Strawn or Tom Golden. Um,
Hold
you
on, I
know,
can't believe we have a less charitable view of these people than Karen Strawn.
well, Karen and Tom are willing to give these people the benefit of the doubt. They're willing to attribute the falsehoods that they constantly pump out to
Oh,
psychological mechanisms like defending your tribe, defending your opinion, things like that. And while I don't discount that, um, with them, they attribute a lot to cognitive dissonance, right? And
and you don't think that cognitive dissonance explains it altogether?
that's where we differ. I think my experiences with them have taught me that they know damn well that they're lying.
I think a lot of them do.
I I I I
Look
I,
at people like Meg Lanker Simons. Look at people like Anita Sarkeesian, who damn well knew she was lying when she did that, did those little hijinks on Twitter.
there's Anita Sarkeesian who there's very little controversy over whether or not she's an outright con artist. I would take it even further and say that every single one of those Tumblrites knows they're full of shit. Like the coffee shop feminists, the Tumblrites, all of them. There is no doubt in my mind that they are knowingly participating in a con job. I don't think there's any part of them that doesn't know they're full of shit. They're just desperately figuring out a way around that.
Well, Nick, I think this is where we agree to disagree. I think a large number of them are conscious and willful liars. But I think there is a certain percentage that, well, they just have their head up their ass. Okay. I really do.
Well, okay. I mean, and a lot of us could have counted ourselves among them. Like, just before I started getting into men's rights activism, I was buying into gender fluidity and believing that gender was just a social construct. I was hanging around in those circles. Um, and I yeah, I mean, I just people said that it was just a one big choice, and I was like, yeah, sure, yeah. I just happen to identify with straight white guys because I'm a straight white guy. Um, uh, but Paul Elam himself admits to buying into feminist crap at one time, and Janice Fiamengo was a very active feminist one time herself.
I was a
So,
purple pill person at one time,
yeah.
so we've all
So
been there.
there's a lot of people who do eventually wake up and they do buy into it for a while. But the reason that I say that now these days every single one of them is knowingly lying is because the only reason that people like you and me and Paul and Janice were ever feminists to any degree um, is because there was no opposition. Now everybody damn well knows that there's an opposition, and you'd have to be kind of working hard to not hear that opposition.
I see what you're saying, Nick. I see what you're saying. You're saying that
So
now that this information is becoming so prevalent that there comes a point where people choose to not hear, choose to not see.
and you can tell that in your conversations with them when you give them information and they disregard it. You're not crazy for seeing that.
No, you got
When
your eyes
you
open.
give people information and they outright disregard it, they're not stupid. They know what they're doing. Their motivations for doing what they're doing can vary greatly. Uh, but again, with all of them, I don't think that there's any one of them that doesn't know that they are knowingly participating in a con job. Not anymore. Not these days.
Not these days. Well, they're preserving their cult. And I'm going to differ from you a little bit, Nick. I think there's a few out there that still don't know and they still believe it. But I see that I see them as a vanishing breed. Okay, I mean, as the information gets out there, more and more you have a choice. I mean, do I believe this or do I not? Do I look at the evidence on its own merits or do I not? And having once looked at the evidence on its own merits, you've seen, you cannot unsee, and from there on out, you become a conscious liar. Instead of being a participant in a lie, you are, in a more profound sense, an embodiment of that lie.
Yeah, and so yeah, any movement will always have a few people who get sucked in by their good intentions, but only stay around for so long. So okay, there might be you know a top 1 percentile of people who actually buy into it, but by and large, even people who just get into feminism uh, very peripherally, people who give their support to like a woman's shelter, right? That's pretty inoffensive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even they, at this point, they have to know that there's some kind of controversy.
They have to know that there's a narrative behind the whole issue of domestic violence or violence against women.
Yeah, especially since I've come down and caused a stir by opposing the walk a mile in her shoes. I mean, word has to have gotten out that there's someone who doesn't approve of that. Um, Now, it is easy to write a person off who is against shelters for women as a misogynist. Well, I'm not against
Until
shelters.
you dig deeper into the story and find out why they hold that opinion.
Yeah, but in any case, I'm not against shelters for women. I'm against shelters only for women, or there only being shelters for women. But yeah, just the very presence of a contrary uh, person.
A counter narrative.
Yeah, yeah, it shows people that there is an alternative, right? And now no one, I find it hard to believe that anyone can understand that there is a counter narrative or that there is an opposition to the current narrative. And it is the lack of that opposition that I base my forgiveness of people who used to be or who were feminists at one point in time. That that lack of existence of a counter narrative is why I say that they weren't full of shit, right? That they honestly bought into it because they didn't know that there was a any disagreement. But again, now that we have asserted ourselves, now that there's no question, now that everybody knows that we exist, people know that there is a counter narrative. And so any thinking person,
They have a duty to look into that counter narrative. I mean,
and
sincerely look into it.
and it's not just a duty that we're placing on them, it's a duty that any thinking person feels.
Any thinking person feels, yes. It ought to
Right.
at least arouse their curiosity and
Any thinking
inspire them to
person,
look into it.
any person who gives the slightest rat's ass about what's true and what isn't.
Is bound to have questions. Is bound
Right.
to to go and scratch their head and say, what about this? Yeah, and at least keep an open mind on the subject.
So yeah, so I've just explained why I trust virtually zero feminists and social justice warriors to be coming at this from a place of being honestly misinformed.
All right. Well, on that note, let's move right along to the next segment of the program. This is, if I am not mistaken, Q number 2 on your list there. Take a look at that. This is an article that was published not long ago. The Daily Mail UK, talking about something that happened in India. And this is a horrible, dreadful story. Nick, do you remember that story that we covered here on the show, a few months back, about the man who was allegedly caught attempting to rape somebody, and he was uh, taken by the mob, dragged through the street by the mob, and taken to a butcher shop? Do you recall that story, Nick? Hello? Did we lose Nick? Nick, are you there?
No, actually, I think he's muted. Hold on.
I am sorry. There was a technical difficulty. What's up?
Oh, well, we're talking about that story that we covered, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months ago here on the program, about a man who was lynched for supposedly attempting to rape somebody, and
Oh,
the crowd, yes, the crowd dragged him through the street. They dragged him to a butcher shop of all places, where all the necessary instruments were, and they cut his penis off.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And yet
Well,
you're comparing the new case coming out of India, where it was determined that he didn't actually do it, to this case.
well, we don't know about that yet. Let's not get too far ahead of the story. But I mean, there seems to be a pattern here of mob justice, vigilante style justice against rapists or alleged rapists.
Yeah,
Uh, Rape is not a popular thing in India.
I don't. You know what? I don't think it's a popular thing in any civilized country.
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I agree.
Um,
Certainly not in the USA or Canada or Europe or Western countries.
yeah. Um, Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. Go on.
Oh well. Let's just jump back into this thing here. At the mercy of the lynch mob, new pictures show how thousands joined gang which kidnapped, quote, rapist from Indian prison, then stripped him naked and beat him to death. Violent mob broke into prison in Dimapur city and kidnapped alleged rapist, stripped and dragged 4 miles while being beaten and pelted with stones. Man believed to be part of the mob died in hospital after police opened fire. Crowd filmed the shocking incident on their phones as man died of injuries. The 35-year-old raped a student from a local women's college last month. Well, they forgot to say he was alleged to have raped. Uh, anyway,
There
and
was an update that came out to that.
yes, how recent was this?
Yesterday or the day before.
Was this
If
in regard to the evidence or the doubt that was placed upon whether the rape actually happened?
Yep.
Yes. Well, I've got the link to that as well, and we're going to be covering that here in a minute. So, thousands of furious Indians swarmed the street to publicly and violently kill a man who was suspected of being a rapist. They broke into the town jail and dragged the guy out. The pictures have emerged after they broke into a prison, kidnapped the man, stripped him naked, and mercilessly beat him to death in front of a frenzied crowd. Well, at least they didn't perform genital mutilation this time.
Oh,
At 20,
yeah, yeah. Thank heavens for small mercies.
well, the other guy, I mean, apparently he's free to live, live out the rest of his life, minus a bit of his anatomy.
Oh, good. Well, good for him.
A 25-year-old of believed to be part of the mob was injured when the police. Okay, we got that already. Taking justice into their own hands, the angry crowd was a terrifying portrayal of the country's increasingly aggressive stance against sexual violence. Wow, it sounds like people in India en masse are pretty mad about rape, sexual
Yeah,
violence.
yeah. It sure does sound like the war on drugs.
Yeah, or the war on something. People are
Oh,
always
did
looking for
I just say
something
that?
to make war upon.
Yeah. Yes. In that vein, a while ago I read an article on uh, Angry Harry's blog, um, where he asked why people are so willing to murder pedophiles in jail. And this applies to the same thing as the rapist in India. It's that um, they're motivated to people in jail are the worst of the worst, and they know that everybody thinks of them as awful. So, in a desperate attempt to seem moral,
They need somebody to dump on because the rest of the world dumps on them already.
that's right. So someone can say, well, I may be the type of person to walk up behind someone else and hit them over the head with a brick and take whatever money's out of their pockets, and they might die, convulsing on the pavement. But but at least I'm not a diddler. They can hold
Not
their
a
head up
kitty
high.
fiddler.
Sorry.
Not a kitty fiddler.
yeah, they can hold their head up high and say that they're not ex-criminal.
Let he
Uh,
who is without sin cast the first stone.
yeah, you know, and I'm not saying that that's an acceptable thing to do, but I'm saying that taking rape or pedophilia and making it a super crime attracts inherently attracts the lowest common denominator to come and do harm on those people just so that they can enjoy being no longer the lowest common denominator for a little while.
Pointing the finger at somebody else's crimes to draw attention away from your own. That's quite understandable.
Um, this is why I don't believe in the concept of moral supercrimes. Um, uh, when back
Which
when
is what feminism tries to make rape into, a moral supercrime.
exactly back when John Travolta was beginning and well, he was partway through his comeback in the '90s. Um, he had first starred in Pulp Fiction, and shortly after that, he starred in The General's Daughter, which is where there was an inquest into military rape, and even in the previews, you could see that John Travolta's character. He said, "What's worse than rape?" Right? That was one of the bits that they threw into the.
What's worse than rape? How about having somebody straddle you from the top and pound your face into an unrecognizable jelly with a brick for 1/2 of an hour?
Yeah. How about
Is,
how about
is that maybe not quite as bad? It's pretty bad, but it's not quite as bad as rape, which is after all a natural function of the body, done in an unethical way.
Well, that's the thing. You're bringing up torture, but ultimately, with and whether or not torture is worse than death is a timeless question. Uh, but
Well, rape does not involve death. Let's keep that in mind.
the specific crime of rape, when they talk about it as being worse than anything else, they're talking about it as being worse than murder. I think to justify murder.
Yeah, it might enter into it. That might enter into it. You never know. By the way, rape is not worse than murder. If there is a moral supercrime, I would say murder is a better candidate than rape by a pretty long chalk.
Yeah, when you
And
elevate
beating
any
somebody's face to an unrecognizable jelly with a brick for 1/2 an hour, that's a better candidate for a moral supercrime than rape.
Yeah. When you elevate any crime to being worse than death, then it becomes an easy justification for anybody who wants to implement death on someone accused.
Well,
Because they're not committing the ultimate sin. The ultimate sin is whatever they did. And people are so eager to do this. Again, the motivation that causes people to be so eager to do this is to avoid suspicion themselves, which is why they're so happy to kill another person on mere suspicion um, of committing the ultimate crime. I,
for some reason, I'm thinking of Lord of the Flies right now. I don't know why. Anyway, let's move along with the program here. Basically, I think the main takeaway I wanted to bring out of all of this was that, okay, here is rape culture. You want to say there's a rape culture in India or anywhere else? Is a rape culture a place where people go out and violently mob murder a person suspected of rape? That's rape culture. That's a culture that tolerates rape, that is morally indifferent to rape, that looks the other way when rape happens. That's a culture that can't leave rape alone. I would say the feminist narrative is shot to holes, or shot full of holes, when you look at stories like this. I really do. And something else I wanted to bring up here, on the subject of rape in India. I mean, you hear a lot about the terrible, terrible epidemic of rape, sexual violence against women in India. Just to give this some perspective, the female population of India is approximately 625 million. That's half the country, 625 million persons. Now, in 2013, according to India's National Crime Records Bureau, about 34,000 rapes were officially recorded in India in 2013. Now, when we do the math, which I did, this means that one female out of every 18,000 in India got raped in 2013. That's just by the official figures. Now, if we consider that a lot of rapes went unreported, well, it's a bit more or a bit less than 1 out of 18,000, but still, I mean, 1 out of 18,000, that's not like there is a huge, unique epidemic of rape in India compared to any other country. I just thought I'd throw that at you for the sake of perspective. One other thing, a story came out recently. I haven't got time to really dig into it very much, but there is a suggestion here. It has been said, it has been alleged that no rape actually happened in this case. And that would be link number 3 on your link list there. We don't know. This is not airtight yet, hasn't been confirmed yet. But I'm going to have to say that the man who was killed in that mob action was innocent. Now, why do I say that? Well, because he was not proven guilty. He was not given due process of law. He was not given a chance to state his case. Somebody said he was guilty, people thought he was guilty, and then they went out and killed him. So I'm going to have to say that what happened in that incident was the death of an innocent man. People killed an innocent man. He was not a rapist. But you can't say that he was a rapist. You know, that remains to be seen. But of course, now it never will be seen. It's too late now. And I think we got about 3 minutes left in the program here. We're coming up to the brick wall of death pretty quick. So, everybody, go to cfproject.blog.com. That is the Poison Manifesto. It's worth a read. It gets you up to speed. And Nick, are there any closing thoughts you want to share with us?
Just to remind everyone that here at Men's Rights Edmonton, we promote men's rights, anti-feminism, MGTOW, even PUA if they're not too much of an asshole about it, which is, you know, a stretch. But you know, if I believe in unicorn feminists, then I believe in acceptable PUAs. So if there's anybody who is pro-male, non-feminist in the Edmonton community who wants to meet other people of the same convictions, then drop us a line through our website, www.mensrightsedmonton.com.
Okay, thank you very much. And yes, I too am always happy to talk to members of the men's rights movement. As you know, I am not a member of the men's rights movement. I don't care about men's rights. All I care about is feminism's wrongs. But I got nothing against people who want to promote men's rights, because, you know, going after feminism's wrongs and promoting men's rights that's approaching the same job from two different directions. And those are two roads that both lead to Rome. And on that note, let's wrap up episode number 41 of the Vanguard Report. It's been great, everybody. We'll see you next week for episode number 42. And once again, never forget, feminism is what we say it is. Everybody, see you next week for episode 41. Bye-bye.
All right, folks, this is your AVFM radio director, James Huff. We will have Blue Collar Red Pill coming up in just a few minutes. That's right, folks. Blue Collar Red Pill coming up in about 4 minutes.
How you doing there, folks, and welcome back to another edition of Blue Collar Red Pill Radio. I'm your host, one of your hosts, Dan Parents here, and tonight we're going to be joined by Prentice Reid. But first, before we get on to that, let me introduce the other host, Jack. Jack, are you there with us tonight?
I'm here, ready, willing, and able.
Right on, Jack. How you been making out this week there, Jack?
Doing pretty good, pretty good. Nice weather down here. It's been about in the 50s during the day, so it seemed like it just flipped a switch and went from winter to spring.
Yeah, we just actually we just went through the what do you call it? Daylight savings time thing there. So we sprung our clocks an hour ahead, so it seems like we get an hour extra daylight nowadays. Not really. What else has been going on, Jack?
Yeah, we did the daylight savings time thing there too this weekend. That always messes me up because I always lose an hour of sleep. So, yeah, I hate that. I wish they'd leave the clocks alone.
Yeah, I know there's a joke in there somewhere. I don't know, something clocks and feminists, maybe. I don't know. The earliest form of feminism.
It's the clocky Archie.
Yeah. What else went on? Oh, yesterday was International Women's Day, wasn't it, Jack?
Yeah.
Let's have a salute.
If we're gonna have it,
let's have a salute to those awesome women out there. Nowadays they call themselves the honey badgers, non-feminists. Those girls who stand up for themselves, take responsibilities for their actions. Those girls are true adult women who demand to be treated as true adult women and not as eternal toddlers. Let's give them a shout. Let's give a shout out to those women.
Woohoo!
Yeah. They deserve all the accolades, all the righteous accolades that they earned.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going to have International Men's Day, we need International Women's Day too, and I'm all for it. I just hate to see the feminists co-opt it the way they have and try to bring women down and pull women down, and women are weak, helpless victims and all that crap that they're obviously not. Women can be strong and powerful, and we see that every day with the women who are in the men's human rights movement.
Absolutely. So yeah, hats off to those ladies, those women, those strong, empowered women. Shoe on head. Lizzie's another amazing individual there. Hats off to those individuals, those young ones. You know what? God bless them for coming up. They're coming up the next generation, right?
Right.
Carrera, the porn star Carrera, sticking up for Cynthia.
Yes, absolutely. Dan, if I'm not mistaken, I heard there's something interesting happening in your neck of the woods, something about a billboard?
Absolutely. Folks, if you get a chance to, and if you're listening live, get on over to Let's Talk Men hashtag on Twitter. You'll find that CAFE, Canadian Association for Equality, has a billboard up in Toronto, downtown Toronto, that states that 50% of the domestic violence victims are men. They are running a campaign to raise more awareness and possibly, the seed money for a shelter, possibly seed money for a shelter for men in the Toronto area for domestic violence victims. So yeah, get on over to CAFE. You can check out the copy of the article on A Voice for Men, but the original is over on CAFE there. Spread it around. The hashtag that they're using is Let's Talk Men. That's an awesome thing. It's happening right in my backyard. Okay, I think we've done enough of our weekly catch-up banner. So let's bring on our guest. Prentice, are you there, Jack? Are you there, sir?
Yes, indeed.
Prentice, I think your camera's running.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
So you want? There you go.
Yeah. Yep.
No, it should be off. It says turn camera on.
I took care of it, folks.
All right, right on. Sorry about that.
All right.
So Prentice, you are an American vet, and you're a non-feminist, and you do some amazing work. And recently, you put pen to paper, so to speak, electronic pen to electronic paper, and put an article out, and it's on The Voice for Men. It just ran there last week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I just wrote my first article for Voice for Men, and the title of that article is Opposing Shared Parenting, the Feminist Track Record. And basically that article details the National Organization for Women, the largest feminist organization in the United States, consistently opposing shared parenting legislation for men, for fathers. And in that article, I laid out pretty much every instance I could find of them doing that. Let me see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 articles of documentation in there that basically lead you right to the source, showing you every instance in which they've done it. So it's undeniable that this has pretty much been the feminist movement's agenda.
So they have you have pretty much laid out evidence of a track record of a continued program of throwing up hurdles to shared parenting.
Exactly.
Denying women the right to pay for child support to a man.
Exactly. And see, what makes it even more interesting is that in their declaration of opposition to these shared parenting bills, you can actually see them lying if you actually go and look at the bills. So what I did was I put their declarations of opposition there, where they're saying, the bill says this, or the bill's goal is this. And then what I did was I provided a link to the actual bill itself, so you can see the text in the bill saying something completely different. So what the National Organization for Women was doing was saying that these shared parenting bills were forcing mothers to give fathers shared parenting when these fathers may not be fit parents. But if you go and read the actual bills, which I provided links to in the article, you will see that the actual bills say that if there is no evidence that the father is an unfit parent, then unless there is evidence that the father is an unfit parent, then the default setting will be shared parenting. But that wasn't good enough for the National Organization for Women. So this is a movement that has denied countless numbers of fathers equal access to their children, equal time with their children, equal influence with their children. And this should be criminal.
It absolutely is. Jack, you're a father. What were your views? Like, would denying you, we're denying your child. Actually, what we're talking about here is denying a child its rights. Okay, their rights to experience, both sides of parenting. Right. That's what we're talking about here. They say that, at least here in Canada, they say that the courts are here for the best interest of the child. I'm kind of guessing that possibly down in the States that they're kind of set up like that. But denying a parent and a child their right to each other. Jack, as a parent, how would you feel about that?
It's Well, it's disgusting. It you know you're right. They say this in the best interest of the child, but when in actuality, it is the best interest in the mother's pocketbook. That's all that matters to these people.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the pocketbook because they're in their statements they kept saying that the only reason that the fathers' rights groups had interest in these shared parenting bills was so that they could cut the costs or the child support payments that they had to pay. And so, their whole emphasis, the National Organization for Women, was in getting the mother custody in most of the cases and forcing the father to pay as much child support as possible. And they pretty much admit that in their declarations. And that's why one of the reasons why that article was so important. So, this is what's going on, and a lot of people have no idea. But the first instance that they did it.
I was just going to ask you that, Prentice. When does this all begin?
Well, the first instance that I've been able to record in that article in which they did it was in 1986. Now, the second instance was in 2005. And the third instance was in 2007.
Can you tell us a little bit about? Okay, so let's think about 1986. We got the Dworkanites running around. I think Salinas is still fucking kicking. We got the daily X. Kill the men, whatever. Instead of kill the intruder. Doctor Who reference there. Instead of Daleks, we got the Daily X. We got them running around still too. All these radical feminists, 1986, kind of kicking around there. I believe at that point in time as well, there was a paper floating around back and forth across the pond dealing with lesbian separatist feminism and
Yes.
political lesbian feminism, right? Where they kind of still shacked up with guys, but it was under protest and still got to all this stuff was going on. In 1986, they pop out with coming out against shared parenting. Now, I believe wasn't Karen DeCrow for shared parenting, and didn't she kind of speak out against that as well? She was like the Christina Hoff Summers back then. The sane feminist in the that just happened to be in the group there. Well,
she did she is referenced in one of those articles where she did speak on behalf of the fathers, in behalf of shared parenting. However, at that particular time, she was not a part of the organization. She was a former member, I believe. But like you say, you're definitely right that she did raise her voice in support of it, which is good. However, as we've seen, like you said, with for instance, Christina Hoff Summers, what tends to happen is anytime a woman of her caliber actually speaks up in favor of men or in action by the fathers' rights movement, is they get ostracized by the movement. And we've seen that with Christina Hoff Summers. We've seen that with Betty Friedan when she exposed the fact that female chauvinists were taking over the movement in the 70s. We've seen that with Camille Paglia, and on and on and on. So this is pretty much the norm when you're talking about the feminist movement.
Yeah, they have a fairly good pattern of seeking to I'm going to say to promote true equality. They talk they talk about equality, but they just don't come through on it.
Yeah, And I mean, it got so bad that I actually forgot to mention this instance that in 2001, the fathers' rights movement wanted to sit down and have negotiations with the feminist movement over changing the legislation in the event of divorces and family court rulings. And what happened was the feminists refused to sit down with them and actually demanded a woman-only meeting. So when people say that, the men's rights movement is not trying to sit down and talk with feminists, that's untrue. This is documented evidence, a documented instance of the men's rights movement trying to sit down and negotiate with the feminist movement, and the feminist movement instead demanding a woman-only movement and refusing to sit down with them. So when people say we're not trying to talk with them, well, here they are walking out and saying, okay, we're not going to negotiate with men's rights movement, period. And that's on the record.
1986, they come out with a statement, the policy. They run with it, even though grievances being aired. For example, Betty Friedan's and the Crow, and I'm not quite sure, what other feminists back then were airing their grievances and warnings about the female chauvinists taking over the feminist movement. And then we go to 2001, where you say this next situation happens, right?
Yep.
And at that point,
that instance was actually in Canada. This instance was in Canada. So this is not just in the United States. This is also happening in Canada as well with the feminist groups up there. So
yeah, we got a pretty good, pretty open border. They float back and forth fairly freely. Those, they're like cockroaches in a multi-stage, housing kind of thing. They just run back and forth across our borders, like they're nasty like that. But yeah. So was this the one where the domestic violence one, the part where there's like an infamous video out there where domestic violence talks were going on as well, and Senator Ann Cools was speaking, and they got up and acted like absolute asses.
wow, I remember seeing that video. So that was Ann Cools talking, huh?
Yeah, Senator Ann Cools was already talking about this, the situation kind of deal, and a bunch of feminists got up. I think actually I seen Big Red's grandmother there, possibly. I don't know, maybe her mother. I'm not quite sure. But the idiocy was there. That genetic trait of the idiocy was there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was Senator Ann Cools there. So yeah, now where were these talks taking place in Canada? In 2001?
I'm not sure in particular. This was actually at a government facility, state government facility. I can't remember the state and the province in particular, but this was definitely in Canada, and like I say, they just refused to sit down and negotiate with the fathers' rights movement or talk to them, period. And we also see this with their social media pages, where if people go on their social media pages, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, or wherever, and in most cases, if you raise any dissenting voice, they're going to ban you, they're going to censor you, they're going to curse you out, and they're going to refuse to have a two-way conversation with you. So I mean, this is what's going on, and this is what we're up against.
Oh, yeah, they are they're interesting. They go, oh, you're just an echo chamber. You guys are all saying the same thing. I'm gonna ban you.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. But
Also,
you mentioned Senator Ann Cools, and
yeah, there's a strong woman.
oh yeah,
There's a
oh
woman
yeah,
who deserves
and
hats off to Women's Day yesterday.
a woman of color too. They try to say that people who question the feminist movement are non-feminists, or all these white men with neck beards, living in their mother's basement and stuff like that. But anytime an Ann Cools or someone like me gets up here and talks, or writes something, automatically we're invisible because we don't fit into their little fable, you know. But the thing is, we're up against a very powerful force, and people have to understand that it's time we transcend color. We need to transcend class differences. We need to transcend nationality, because it's all of us in this together. And
Well, you know what?
If I might break in here for just a second, that you said something, Prentice, just then that is very. We need to put it on a freaking billboard in every city in the United States. We need to transcend all of that stuff, because if men stand together as men and set the other stuff aside, the feminists and the entire government and a lot of other groups do not want us to do that. They
No.
want to keep us separated. They want to keep us fighting against each other, because they know if we ever get together, they're in trouble.
yeah,
And I'll get off my soapbox.
that's why my friends come from all color spectrums. They come from all countries. They come from all states, all religious affiliations, belief systems. And I see a lot of guys, way too many guys, separating themselves into these brackets of, how much does this person make? What's their skin color? This person is Christian, so I'm not going to talk to him. This person is atheist, I'm not going to talk to him. And meanwhile, the suicide rate just keeps going up. And one of the reasons why the male suicide rate is through the roof is because men have this tendency to continually isolate themselves, like we're seeing, these guys doing today. And it's too late in the game for guys to still be doing that.
Come on, you guys don't understand oppression. You're just humans. Come on, don't you know that there's the patriarchy going on here? Won't somebody please save the poor animals? Never mind everybody else. Never mind men. Half the human fucking race. Worry about fucking pets. And I'm a dog owner. I love my hairy son. But let's put priorities right here. The feminine. You talk about all these things. How you're getting to the stuff there, Prentice. Like they have programs for their pets.
Yeah.
Before they're taking care of men's interests.
Yeah. Well, we got. This is a nation where, rabbis are allowed to slice off parts of baby boys' genitalia in front of an audience and suck the blood out of his penis. And this is the same nation where, with every other sentence, we're supposed to bring up some issue of female oppression. You know what I'm saying? And we're not even getting into the circumcision issue. Where the male gender does not even have the right to bodily integrity. And not only that, but we don't have the right to not be sexually assaulted in front of an audience.
Yeah, there was a really good tweet or an idea, kind of meme, theory, basic idea theory, kind of going around that a male's typical first experience of a sexual assault, is circumcision.
Yeah.
It is a vicious fucking assault on his genitals. So and that basically technically kind of classifies it, criminally, as a sexual assault.
Yep, it
Now,
does.
and they are at an incredibly young age, for the most part. And there's that Florida fucking case that's going on right now, which is really a fucking an affront to the UN Human Rights Declaration of Human Rights, International, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, bodily integrity. We got a 4-year-old fucking child, 4-year-old human being here that will remember this
Yep.
fucking day. Guaranteed. You chop off a fucking bit of his pecker there, he's gonna fucking remember this day for the rest of his fucking life, and how
Yep.
his family fucking failed him at this fucking point in time, how his government, how his fucking justice system failed him, fucking at this point in time of his life, and ignoring his fucking his right to bodily integrity.
And if you
The
don't have
same
the
right.
right to bodily integrity, you don't have any rights. You don't have any rights.
Yeah, sorry, I get a little. I go off on a soapbox tangent there. Anyways, so go on, Prentice. So 2001. Okay, so what's the next incident? When's the next incidence of feminists balking at blocking fathers and children enjoying a healthy relationship together?
Well, the next instance was in 2005, and basically the National Organization for Women, they said that they claimed that the bill in 2005 was just arbitrarily giving half of the custody of the child, or half of the visitation, to the father, willy-nilly, irregardless of whether or not that father was a fit parent or a safe parent, in whose household the child could be trusted. But the actual bill itself, what the actual bill itself says is that the parent who is demanding sole custody or primary custody of the child would have to, in that particular instance, prove that the other parent is not a fit parent. So basically, shared parenting would be the default arrangement, unless that parent who was demanding primary custody had concrete evidence that the father, most of the time, of course, it's going to be the father, that the father was not a fit parent. So
what they were doing, what the bit of legislation, the bit of shared parenting legislation would have done, was put the onus on the accusatory parent to prove that the other parent was unfit through say via abuse, like maybe how that women, which would be kind of denying how like women could be like 50% of the perpetrators of domestic violence, like the billboard up in Canada, Toronto, Ontario, Canada says for CAFE, Canadian Association for Equality. Oh, there's a smooth transition, I hope. Ka-ching. Sorry, Prentice.
yeah, I mean, and like I say, they just flat out came on and said, well, we're motivated to get mothers custody of the child in most cases. I mean, they just flat out came out and said it. So that's their agenda right there, their cards right there on the table.
Now, this was, I believe this was predicted by Aaron Pitsey, who said that they would be using the family courts to separate fathers from their children via false allegations. I believe Aaron Pitsey had made this comment.
Yeah.
She predicted that this was going to happen, and that document kind of puts that into play. It kind of keeps that thing into play. They don't even have to prove that the father is an unworthy parent. All they have to do is say, well, he's abusive, bang, and that's it.
Yeah.
Never mind if she's abusive.
And I mean, me coming from a poor black neighborhood where, like I say, 59% of the women there, 59% of the mothers there have children by different fathers. and you know, you have a large percentage of single mother households, and seeing how that at least partially destroyed the community. You know, to see the National Organization for Women sitting up here and saying, you know, well, shared parenting is not necessarily in the best interest of the child or the family, and by extension, the community. You know, to see somebody sit up there and say that it just floored me. You know, but
Now you bring up something about now that I'd like to touch upon later. But that deals with your future, your next article that's coming out.
yeah.
And so I'd like to touch upon that after I believe the last incident that you find of this happening is in 2012.
Yeah, that was well, was that 2000? No, that was actually 2009. That was 2009.
2009.
And in 2009, they opposed a shared parenting bill A00330. And basically, they lied once again about the bill making shared custody mandatory. And the bill said that its goal was to create a presumption of default shared custody if there was no valid excuse that doing so would be against the child's best interest. So now, in this instance right here, they actually came right out and said, well, this was their statement right here. It says, as court-ordered arrangements imposed upon embattled and embittered parents, joint custody can only enhance family chaos. So they said joint family chaos. The National Organization for Women, New York State, has always favored a primary caregiver, usually the mother. So right there, that's where they admit that they usually favor the mother. The National Organization for Women, New York State, has always favored a primary caregiver, usually the mother. It says a presumption to ensure stability and continuity of care for children. Fathers' rights groups are at the forefront of the push for legislation establishing a presumption in favor of joint custody. Joint custody over the wishes of one parent facilitates using the children to maintain access and control over the parent's life. So that was the National Organization for Women's statement. Now the actual.
So they say you know we're staunch feminists. We believe in equality.
Yeah, equality. Yeah. But yet they're opposing shared parenting for fathers. You know.
Well, and then there's the Duluth model. You know,
yep.
And then there's affirmative action, and then there's Title IX, and then there's rape shield laws, and then there's
manspreading.
Oh God.
Yeah, I had to bring that up. Sorry.
Jack, what are you thinking so far, man? Chime in there, brother. I've been kind of hogging the Prentice. I've been apprenticing the Prentice.
You're doing great, man. Well, yet this whole thing has been about removing fathers from the home. This has been feminist goal from the beginning. It has been their goal from the beginning because they know when you remove the father from the home, the mother, the woman, is going to be dependent on someone.
Yeah.
And they want her to be dependent on the government because you've got these women who are dependent on the government, and then the feminists are going, yeah, we're going to keep the money we're going to keep the aid for single mothers and blah blah blah, and so they have people who are dependent on feminists to keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and I mean the argument will be raised. Well, they fought Not all feminists are like that. But I mean, you got 4 instances here of the largest feminist groups in the United States openly opposing shared parenting, and there's no opposition from any feminist group. There's no opposition or protest from any group of feminists that's recorded. Where are they at?
Whenever a feminist says that, oh, not all feminists are like that. You know, when you're talking about this, like the family courts. Well, the feminists who aren't like that, when it comes to the TERFs, the trans exclusionary radical feminist, or the feminists that do want to kill all men, I ask them, okay, if you're not like that, and most feminists aren't like that, then why aren't you marching and protesting against the ones who are like that? Where is that protest? And they go, and you ask them, when was the last time that you marched and protested and spoke out against these people? And they go, yeah.
And you know, I condemn every single one of them, because missing fathers in my community has contributed to the skyrocketing rate of imprisonment, the crime rate, you know, and it's atrocious. You know, you've cheated these children out of their future. You know,
both male and female children.
Both male and female children.
Those protest feminists, you know, they fault. They're not all feminists are like that. They're those feminists who protest, you know, these horrendous acts by, you know, the ones that are leading the feminist, you know, policies and stuff like that. Yeah, those feminists, those NAFAL feminists, they're like unicorns. You know, they're not like reality. You know, not all feminists are like that, and they're drowned out by the majority, just the drones following.
And not, you know, I give them that. You know, maybe not all feminists are like that, but you know what? When I hear you say that, I'm going to challenge you. Show me that you're not like that. Show me. There you go. Show me you protesting the National Organization for Women. You know, show me you protesting this man-spreading campaign to shame men based on how they sit on a train. You know.
My body, my choice, unless it's a man trying to sit down on a subway.
Exactly. You see what all these other feminists are doing, and you're sitting back and you're playing dumb. You know.
Well, and that's. Let me ask you a question.
Here's a thought. Hold on, I want to touch on that man-spreading thing. Okay, here's the thought. So guys got outdoor plumbing, right? So they spread their legs a little bit, you know, a little bit more than women. All right, so that's what's going on, you know, the lower half there of the body. So since women got tits and, you know, they have to take up a little bit more, you know, their arms spread out a little bit more. Should we call their up, you know, spread out upper chest there? Should we call that fem spreading? You know, are we that fucking idiotic that we can't acknowledge that there are some biological differences which may, you know, affect how we sit?
Well, the latest victim of this man-spreading shaming was Tom Hanks, and you know, he actually spoke out against it at the New York Knicks game that he was attending, where he was interviewed, and you know, they actually showed the screenshot of him, and he's, you know, sitting there. There's no crowd around. The train isn't crowded. There's no one even sitting next to him. He's merely sitting with his, you know, his legs spread comfortably, because no one is sitting next to him. You know, nobody is there who he can infringe on their space. You know, there's no one even close to him. You know.
Well, Prentice, I'd like to ask you a question. Your experience as a boy and a young man growing up in a poor black community, would you say that the fatherlessness and therefore feminism has caused a rise in the level of violence in the poor black communities?
I would say so, because what happens is, if you don't have male mentors and male role models, what happens is you seek them out in the surrounding community. And the first group of young men that you come, well, older men that you come across is usually going to be gang members. You know, gang members are drug dealers, and it's a one-way ticket to prison after that. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Um,
see, the feminists, their reason for doing this that they say is because men are violent, men, and everything, and we need to keep them away from children so we can raise these children not to be violent like men. And what happens when we have a matriarchal family structure? We see an increase in violence.
yeah.
So.
And the father teaches that
See that?
behavioral control, that emotional control, that self-discipline. Mothers can partially teach it, and some mothers can teach it, but typically it's the father. And without that emotional stability, you're going to be an erratic personality. You're going to have poor behavioral control, and you're going to end up acting out, and whether it's in school or whether it's somebody you encounter on the streets. And when you do that in a poor community, the police are going to be waiting right there, and you're headed to prison.
Jack, you brought up an interesting point there. How you're talking about men are the feminist views and how men are violent, more violent, blah blah blah. Incarcerate them. Well, at least that's the stand you're taking down there in the States. Up here in Canada, we got Professor Elizabeth Sheehy that her stand is that men are so violent that we should just be able to kill them in our sleep and not be questioned on in the courts about it.
Well, yeah, but we
Wow.
do it in practice. It was here in my home state of Tennessee that a woman shot her husband while he was laying in the bed asleep. Shot him in the back with a shotgun, and she was found not guilty. Well, I take that back. I'm sorry. She was found guilty, but she served I don't know, a few days, a few months in prison. Like 3 months or something. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, she got a slap on the wrist. And she is now married again and has her in custody of her children, and life's back to normal.
Wow.
Oh, of course, because we can't treat her like an adult there, responsible for her actions. No, God, no. Heaven forbid that an adult human should be treated like a human if they got a vagina.
Yeah. But anyway, go ahead, Dan. I want to be quiet now.
Okay. All right. So, Prentice, let's we got to get skipping along here a little bit faster because I want to dig into that. I want to get back to that eugenics thing because you're talking about you're delving into a lot of how this is kind of played out in the black community. A lot of fatherness, going on, and how they're the young bucks are turning to the the thug life, the gang life, for direction, and how they're not receiving good guidance.
Yeah.
And they're engaging in criminal behavior, and ending up in jail. And once they end up in that kind of system, it's like a hamster wheel almost, a revolving door.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have minds of our own, so we can't. I'm not going to pretend that we're just pure victims of circumstance, but each one of us, it took us a conscious effort to deprogram ourselves from that that cultural milieu that we grew up in. And
I think we could agree upon, without a good foundation, you're going to be more susceptible to unhinged influence. I'm going to say unhinged because some of the behavior that they engage in is absolutely crazy as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure most, 90% of adults would agree.
Yeah, yeah. But the whole thing is, you got like I say, you got a mother who has where 59% of the mothers have children by different fathers. You're gonna have a household where there's strange men in the house that aren't your parent, aren't your father. And that's going to create a volatile situation itself where you're going to grow up, you're going to have a lot of unresolved anger issues um, towards this, unrelated figure being in your house, you know. And those are,
And it's not only it doesn't play out not only just for the young bucks. It plays out as well for their daughters as well.
yeah,
Because there's higher incidences of teenage pregnancy, dropping out of school, increased criminal behavior, violence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Other unhinged behavior. So it's not only affecting the young bucks, but it also affects
yes,
their
it
daughters
does.
as well.
And one of
Yeah.
the,
Hold on, let me finish here.
okay,
But the tendency is to incarcerate the young guys and excuse the young girls. We see that all the time. Tommy Sotomayor points out, violent black women all the time, and they're getting away with shit.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas, if it was a young guy, his ass is going to jail.
yeah.
The McDonald's incident. That young man in New York, the McDonald's there. Do you remember that case?
Was
I
that the
believe his
one
name
where
was
the guy
Tyrone
was
or
a
something like that.
Yeah, he was attacked by two women, and he defended himself, and I think he got like a broom or something, and retaliated, and he ended up losing his job and going to jail for a little bit, I think, right?
Yeah, he got charged. There's clear video evidence showing he was attacked. He was, defending himself. He was a young black man working behind the counter at his job, doing doing what he was told to do,
Yeah,
by his boss, acting lawfully, legally and lawfully, to defend himself after being attacked,
yeah,
and he still got charged because he was the penis owner in that situation.
yeah. And we also had a incident with a guy in New York. This was a former minor league pitcher, and he was on the subway, and he had a 8-ball jacket on, and a group of girls, young girls, I'm not going to call them girls, they were actually women, but they started making fun of his jacket and and you know cursing at him, and eventually one of them hit him, and he defended himself and slapped her, and then after he slapped her, a bunch of the guys on the train started trying to hit him and stuff like that. Luckily, this was a pretty big guy, so he was able to defend himself and fight everybody off. But he ended up getting charged and spent a little time in jail before the police actually reviewed the video and then released him. So this was even more recent incident. This was last year, I believe.
The epic slap video. That's right. Like, oh my God, like it was such a it was such a thing of beauty, actually, because she attacked him, she accosted him, she attacked her from behind, and if I remember correctly, she had like taken off her shoe or used her purse, so basically used a weapon, because women, a lot of people might say, well, it was just a purse. Well, you know what? You got a cell phone in there with a battery on it that weighs a little bit of, some change that weighs a little bit. You got, some other odds and sods that are going to weigh, possibly weigh a little bit in there. And you swing that on the end like a sling. They don't understand, it's not centrifugal force, but it's how things are, how speed increases exponentially on the end of a radius in an arc, right?
Yeah.
Where, the inside of the arc is turning 5 miles an hour, outside of the arc is turning like 50 miles an hour.
Inertia.
That's why you get. Yeah. Well, no, it's why you get a differential in your car sort of deal. When you're turning, it has to do with radius, right? The inside of a circle always turns slower than the outside of a circle.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So, anyways, yeah, I remember that's an awesome video. I just see Iron John tossed in that gentleman at the McDonald's. His name was Rayvon McIntosh. Yeah, I forgot his name. I knew it had Vaughn in it somehow. I thought it was Trayvon. I know that. Yeah. So, anyways, okay. So we've kind of eaten up a whole bunch of our time here. But let's talk about your next article that's coming down the pipes there, Prentice, please.
Oh, okay. Well, the next article I wrote is titled "Feminism and Eugenics: Engineering Reproductive Totalitarianism," and this one details the feminist movement's intimate connection with eugenics and its dictatorial control over female reproduction. Which is very interesting because today they claim, it's just men who historically have been interested in controlling female reproduction. But, their celebrated heroes themselves have been motivated and had an agenda to control female reproduction. And, so this article here lays out the figures, the instances in which they came right out and said that was their agenda. You're talking about Margaret Sanger, Victoria Woodhull, Mary Stopes, and on and on and on. So this is an article you want to look forward to.
So this would kind of, this kind of sounds like a more nefarious version of what the original feminists were, advocating for, which was kind of the 10-pound vote.
Yeah.
It's control over the masses. You don't get to vote, and you don't get to reproduce. We get to say who gets to reproduce, and we get to say who votes. It's control. Ultimate control over the masses.
Yeah.
This kind of, this is just kind of a really, I guess, would it be safe to say it's kind of really an extension of what's going on in the media we're seeing. Silencing and censoring of, right across the board of dissenting voices. From Gamergate to the Facebook pages you were talking about earlier to articles, just outright lying. How you doing there, Jeff? Charlotte? Yeah, Charlotte's Web of Lies. That should be the name of his GQ article. I just for reference, I tweeted his article, which references me to the local police there, and I said, "Geez, they better arrest me." And I informed GQ about that, and they deleted that comment. I don't know why. Maybe it's possibly because I have their fact checker, and what I said is that when talking about my exes, I said that I owe them a debt of gratitude, actually, because they created the human rights advocate that I am today. Which is really contrary to what Jeff wrote down in his GQ article. I don't know. I don't know why they would lie about something like possibly maybe it might be because of the moneymaker and how this control affords them money making opportunities, such as the birth control thing. Which was there a money making aspect to the birth control your birth control article there, Prentice?
Well, the key word is control. Control, and if you're a megalomaniac, then control is your motivation, and you see that with the feminist movement wanting to control the dialogue on campus, and where you are not allowed to have men's rights groups on campus. So this is the control has been their modus operandi from pretty much day one, and it had its genesis in control over the female reproductive system, and they wanted to control who women bred with, the type of offspring they had, and and they pretty much were demanding that the government forcibly tie women's tubes at gunpoint. Women who they deemed were unfit. to
That kind
reproduce.
of falls in with Simone de Beauvoir's kind of premise that no woman should be left to raise her own children.
Yeah,
The children should be taken out of the family to be raised. So yeah, again, it's relinquishing control, individual control over to the statehood. You remove
exactly.
the father from you remove the second parent, typically the father, from the family unit, and the mother, who usually gets the child, is going to rely on the state. You hand birth control over to the state, and women and children will be dependent upon the state, because birth control happens to deal with children as well as women. Sheesh, what's the odds? I don't know. Sometimes I think what that'll be the next feminist war. That will be the next feminist thing. Like you don't need children to be dependent on the state for child support or something like that.
And
It'll be
I
a
mean,
non-existent child that fucking the state has to pay for it, and that'll be the next feminist hill to fight on. Something like that. Yeah, crazy idea. Prentice, I believe we got to get going here. Jack, do you want to say anything? Hello,
Yeah,
Jack.
yeah. Sorry, I had my mic muted. Yeah, Prentice, thank you for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure to meet you. I look forward to reading your article, and I hope that we can find a way to get back on the show sometime. Again, thanks for
it
coming
was a
on.
pleasure, and this is my first interview with Voice for Men, the Voice for Men crew. I've always been a big fan, but it was fun, and hopefully we can do it again.
All right, and I'm going to hand it back to you, Dan.
Prentice, awesome. Thanks ever so much. That's an incredible bit of investigative reporting that you've done regarding NOW and their blocking of shared parenting bills in various ways, underhanded, sleight of hand. They're kind of grandiose in their claims, and fictitious in their beliefs on what shared parenting really entails, and how it's more of a money grab. Make sure that if you're listening there, folks, make sure to get on over. The link for that will be in the low bar for that article on how NOW is blocking. NOW, the largest feminist organization out there, has been actively blocking shared parenting. Looking forward to your next article, Prentice, regarding eugenics, feminism, and its tie to eugenics. That, I imagine, is going to be another incredible article. Do you got anything to say there, Prentice, before we let you go?
No, just men, take care of each other. Don't separate yourself on race, religion, class. We're all brothers in this movement. That's all I got to say.
Amen.
Excellent. Awesome words of wisdom. Okay, folks, I'm just gonna slip in the plug for the cafe campaign that's going on right now. Remember to get your comments and tweet about Let's Talk About Men under the hashtag Let's Talk About Men. 50% of the domestic violence victims are men. Women are equal to men in their perpetration of domestic violence. Always remember that to take the red pill, and you can lead a feminist to logic, but you can't make them think. Thanks for joining us again, folks. We'll talk to you later. Thanks again, Prentice. Bye for now.